Welcome to Traveling Through Life, a podcast on the go. I'm your host, Tara, and the founder of the blog Travel with TMc, which is where this adventure all began. Traveling Through Life, a podcast on the go, is a fun and quirky show that delves into all things travel and adventures from the road, in the air, and in between here and there. And if you listened to last week's episode with Sim and Karthik of the Brown Van Life, you'll know that I had an in-between moment, and I'm having another one today. I'm fresh off returning from my trip to Guatemala, and tomorrow morning I'm off on a last-minute domestic flight on which I saved about $2,000 thanks to the use of points and miles. If you're curious to learn more about what I'm talking about and how you can do the same, visit the show notes for the link to my Points and Miles course for Canadians. Also, make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen and leave a 5-star review with a comment about who you'd like to hear in future episodes. This season, we cover all sorts of travel topics, from retirees living that van life to traveling with pets and even to living in North Korea. It's my hope that at least one of these episodes will be relatable and you'll see yourselves in the guests that come on here, or that other episodes will inspire you to explore the world in a brand new way. This week on Traveling Through Life, a podcast on the go, we meet Lindsay Davies from the Canadian travel blog I've Been Bit. Lindsay is a multi-talented woman with a background in graphic design. She grew up traveling for sports and since then has combined her love of travel with her love of learning. She's tackled French, learning about nature, and loves learning about Indigenous cultures. Lindsay rounds out our chat with an excellent piece of advice from her mom, and I know that you're going to love this episode as much as I enjoyed hosting her. Thanks for listening, and let's dive in. Welcome, Lindsay. I'm so happy to have you on the show today.
Oh, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. If people aren't following along on either of our social channels, where you might have seen us sharing each other in our hangouts from time to time, Lindsay and I go back a few years. I actually reached out to you on Instagram because I had seen your name on a list of Canadian bloggers, and I saw that you were in Kitchener, and I was like, wait, hold up, there's another travel blogger in Kitchener. And so I messaged you and was like, yo, we should meet up. And you were game for it, to your credit. And
Oh, yeah.
the
Of
rest
course.
is
I was like,
history.
so you randomly like, hey, want to hang out and be friends? I'm like, okay. Please and thank you.
Yeah. We met up for coffee at the original Cafe Pirates location.
Yes.
And
Oh, R.I.P.
I know. And shenanigans have been ensuing ever since. So
100%. And plenty of great shenanigans for sure, with more on the way, hopefully. So
more to come. Yeah, we do need to plan a van trip this year. I'm serious about that. I think that would be a blast.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, we do.
Awesome. Well, why don't you tell everybody a bit about yourself? So who you are, what you do, and where you're calling in from today.
Okay, so as Tara said, I am Lindsay and I've been bit by the travel bug. So hence my blog is called I've Been Bit. I've been in the blogger sphere, I unofficially, I would say since 2015, because that's when I started this whole thing, but I had no idea what I was doing. And I'd say really it was like 2019, pretty much when we met that things started to actually get like serious. So we went official with the blogging. My background is in graphic design, and then I dabbled in social media, and then it just kind of all fell into place from there. I've always been a big fan of the outdoors and that, so I do a lot of hiking and more recently kayaking. I'm born and raised in St. Catharines, which is where I am now.
St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. If we have any international listeners.
Yes, true. Sorry, my Ontario-centric brain here. My bad. That's where I am now. So I've been doing a lot more travel and just like meandering in my own backyard, which has been really cool. Because many people know that Niagara Falls or wine country with Niagara on the lake, but there's a lot more to see and do. So it's been fun to kind of pick out some lesser known destinations. I've got some ideas planned now that the warmer weather is coming. Hopefully,
we've had like reverse seasons this year. It's like we had spring and winter, and now we've got winter happening in spring.
Yeah, it's don't even get me started. It's been a while to say the least. It's a wild ride no matter what with what we do, but then it's when Mother Nature likes to step in, then it's extra wild, and here we are.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's kind of me in a nutshell. I will let you,
Yeah.
poke and prod me as I go. I'm not great from shoot from the hip. I'm good at answering questions though. So here we go.
Fabulous. That's good. I know a lot of people have questions to our industry, like what is travel blogging and what does that look like? And can you speak both to your work as a graphic designer and to a travel blogger and maybe how the two like complement each other as well?
Yeah, sure. With my background in graphic design, that comes with a lot of like color theory and rule of thirds, things like this. So those the kind of design principles really transfer well into what we do as content creators and travel writers. So what makes the composition of a photo a little bit better, geography wise. Having a little bit of motion in a clip versus a steady shot, and then as well. The programs behind it, like I know Photoshop is my bread and butter, so being able to do the photo editing and that for my blogs as well as other publications is very beneficial. Uh, so in that regard, that kind of transfers over well. And then because I'm in a marketing background, my familiarity, early on with Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever it is now, Instagram, that kind of thing. It helps. Obviously, it's not nearly what it was 10 years ago. And you kind of kick myself. I wish I started sooner, but hey, better late than never, right? Um,
Nice.
yeah. So, in that regard, yeah. So, having that background really helps to smooth things along for me, especially even I have a little bit of a tech background too. So, if my site breaks, not always, but sometimes I can actually fix it myself, which is very beneficial. Or if I
Yeah, and
go into my
I've even come
style.
to you for help, like because you are more tech inclined than
Yeah.
I am. So I'll message Lindsay and be like, "Oh my God, I'm panicking. What do I do?" And she
Yeah.
can go into like nitty gritty coding details and help out
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If it's a lot of styling stuff and like the website looks like, I can usually figure that out. But if it's actually the functional back end, it's like, I'm afraid I'm gonna break it more. So, but I do what I can.
Yeah, and so you went to school for graphic design, right?
Yes, yeah. So I have a diploma in graphic design, and then I went back to school because that was the era of, when trying to find a job, they were
Yeah.
like, "Well, we want you to have a degree," and so I was like, "I can do the work." So I went back to school. Actually, funny enough, I went to the University of Waterloo.
I work for you today.
Yeah, I love that. I love it so much. And then yeah, and then I did the arts and business program with fine arts as my major because that was the closest thing they had to graphic design at the time. Do not even get me
And
started on Stratford campus opening halfway through my degree.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second because for people who are listening and not watching, you're referring to the University of Waterloo, which is the sweatshirt that I'm wearing and
Yes,
the campus that you went
fair.
to for your degree. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then with that, I was a part of the co-op program, and so that allowed me to pick up some jobs in between school. After my first year, the way the it works for arts and business is you alternate semesters. Do one term of working, one term of school, vice versa until your final year. Um, so that was interesting because that helped me, travel a little bit more as well. My first co-op, I actually ended up staying out for 2 terms and doing 8 months, and that was out west in Vancouver, where I worked for Triumph, which is Canada's National Laboratory for Particle and Nuclear Physics.
That is a mouthful.
Yeah, it was a blast. It was a wild adventure. It's very interesting being one of like two or three artists because the marketing team was quite small, in a very predominantly not just science like oriented, but like state of the art like research facility. Where we're dealing with radiation, and it could be it was a very interesting time, especially since that's when Fukushima happened. While I was there, so it was really it nuclear is a topic that is very touchy for sure. But it can be done in very safe ways. So that was part of my job was to help educate the public and say, hey, nuclear is scary, yes, but we're going about it the right way, in order to not just provide power, but also there's a lot of cancer research and treatments and that rely on cyclotrons and radiation research. And that's what Triumph does. So
That's got to be one cool thing about design is that and travel blogging as well, actually, is that you get to learn so much about things that are outside your expertise in
Mhm.
order for you to be able to do your job well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been super cool. And then, it's one of those things where if I were to go back and do, this journey all over again, would I change a couple of things? Yeah, but at the same time, like, it might if I didn't get me into like these crazy situations that I, up until today, like, I think I did all right. Even though it was a bit of, well, organized chaos is what I like to call it. Pretty much the story of my life. So.
Uh, and like, where did travel blogging come from for you? You said you started in 2015, which is ironically the same year that I started.
Oh,
But
stop. I didn't realize that. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. What was the impetus for you to like pick up the technological pen, let's say?
So I did a little bit of blogging while I was at Triumph. So it was called, what was it Pixels and Particles, I think is what I called it. And I talked a little
That's
bit about,
amazing.
right? I love my alliteration. So I talked about being an artist or artist oriented, I would say, in a research facility, and just the interesting conversations I would have with these state of the art scientists, and these are people at the top of their fields trying to explain their research to me, and it's like a deer in the headlights. Like I have no idea what's going on. I remember the first time I wrote an article for our website, and my boss at the time was absolutely fantastic. He was like a dad to me. He was such a sweetheart. He prefaced it with, "Don't worry, you did very good. Like, I just don't be concerned about the edits." And literally, there were 3 words that weren't edited or switched around or whatnot. It was like at, the, and or something like that. So it was so funny. But it's trying to write like crazy, top of their field research and trying to, I say dumb it down, but translate it really into,
Yeah, for the
layman's terms
layperson.
as,
Hmm.
it was tricky. It was a difficult challenge, but
So your
it was
first
it was
blog
fun.
wasn't even I've Been Bit. It
No,
was Pixels and Particles. Okay, so when
yeah.
did I've Been Bit come in? I don't know if I've asked you this question before. Bad friend move.
Oh gosh, no, not at all. Like, so I graduated Waterloo in 2014. And then prior to that, I had taken a year off and done, a Euro. Yeah, not a year. I took my summer semester. So like I took instead of going and doing a co-op, because we're allowed to have one miss, I went and traveled Europe. And then I went out east when I graduated university, and then coming back, I moved back in with my parents and that, and I was like, I just need something to do, to keep me sane. So that's kind of when I took the jump, because people before that had said to me, they're like, Lindsay, like, why aren't you writing about this? Why aren't you blogging about this? I'm like, I don't even know, like, what, because especially
What a
for,
blog is. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, because especially
Yeah.
for, pixels and particles there, it was mainly just, it was just interesting. It was just like an accessory that'll add to like our social media, because at that time I think they only had a Facebook page. I don't even know if Instagram was really a thing yet. This would have been back in 2011. Like Instagram was around, but like for
Mm,
their purposes, like it wasn't really. I don't
wasn't a
remember.
marketing tool at that time.
Yeah, I might have opened their Instagram. I definitely started their Twitter account, that I remember. And then I pretty much took over their Facebook, because they posted like once a month kind of thing. Um, So that became a big part of my job, and this was just a supplemental item that I could help create content and share and whatnot. But there was no, if you had uttered the acronym SEO, I would have no idea what you're talking about. Whereas now it makes me want to pull my hair out. But that's
Oh,
besides the
that's why
point.
I have gray hair.
But 100%. In my
Yeah.
opinion, gray just means that I lighten my hair less. It means the color will stay longer when I do
Yeah.
have color. I say I don't have the color in my hair, but I am wearing the crazy tights for you. So
Tights. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna side note this again. For anybody who doesn't know Lindsay, she always has fantastically colored hair and the best funky tights. Those are like her signatures. So I was gonna ask if you were wearing any today.
yeah, I thought about it this morning. I was like, oh, do I have enough time to dye my hair quickly for this? I'm like,
Oh
oh,
my
Lindsay, I'm like,
God.
you're being a little extra. So I'm like, okay, I've got the tights here. They even match my glasses. They're both teal
Oh,
for those that are, listening and not watching.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and teal is my favorite color, so that's pretty much par for the course.
It is a U
But
color, yep.
it is a me color, yeah. Um, yeah. Back to the tangent of how I got into blogging. Yeah, so pretty much I had people, especially once I came back from Europe, people were like, oh, like, why aren't you like writing about it? Why aren't you doing this, and that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I just started finally. when I came back, and I thought about it, and honestly, I was like, I took a month just to like think on my name, and of course, I've been bit was the first one I had thought of, and then I was like, oh, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, and then I just couldn't get my head, off my brain. So I was like, well, if I'm still thinking about it a month later, then here we go. This is what I'll stick with. So, um, yeah, and then after that, it was very much, I'm sure you were probably very similar when you first started writing. It was like, I went here, I did this, it was fun.
Yeah, the whole
So,
like journal style, it was a way to
yeah,
document. It wasn't
yeah,
your parents and your friends were reading it. It wasn't for the World Wide Web,
yeah,
really. Yeah.
exactly. And funny enough, it wasn't until, and I was much more, even since like the beginning, I was much more in tune with like social media. I used to spend a lot of time on Twitter back in the era of Twitter chats and things like this. I just loved hanging out and chatting, and that was kind of where I got more involved with the community versus, actually the blog itself. Yeah, it wasn't until I posted, I had gone up north, like up towards Tobermory area, not quite as far. But I went to one of the waterfalls up there and I took a picture and I posted on Twitter and I had tagged Bruce County, not realizing that I got my boundaries wrong and it was actually in Grey County. And so Grey County, being great sports, they were like, "Hey, that picture's great, but like it's in our area, not Bruce County." And I was mortified. Being
Oh.
a recovering perfectionist, I was like, "Oh, I made a mistake. God, this is the worst. I'm so embarrassed." And then a couple months later, I got an email from them saying, "Hey, we want to have you up for a winter fam tour." And I was like, what's a fam tour? They're like, oh, it's a familiarization tour. We create an itinerary, we have you up, and we get you to try out these different attractions and experiences. And then we want you to write an article about it, and that's when it kind of clicked. So this would have been 20. Oh, I was still working full time, so that would have been
For someone else
2000.
instead of for yourself, because you definitely work
Yes.
full time right now.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. I should say the typical, I should work full time in the typical sense of 9 to 5 versus
Yes.
when I want to. I want to say 2017, 2018 in there. And that's what kind of, dinged as like, oh, I could do this to help people plan trips, but then also for people to, destinations to promote what the things to do and whatnot. So, that's when it first kind of clicked. And I was going to the odd conference. Like I went to my big one was the Women in Travel Summit,
So
especially when I
that
was a
is
beginner.
wits.
Yes, that is wits. And, it was great for, especially first starting out where I was looking more so for community versus making this, a business. And that's how, that was a big part of my, social media presence was being in the Wonderful Twitter chats and stuff like this. Since then, I parted ways a bit with Wonderful just because, I'm very focused up here in Canada now and my job trying to expand a little more, but we'll see how that goes. But, it's been a very interesting journey to say the least. It was definitely filled with a lot of oopses that turned into, oh, okay, this isn't so bad.
I love that. Okay, so I want to go back in time a little bit.
Yeah.
I'd love to know more about, do you remember the first trip you ever took growing up, or where did your travel bug come from? Like what was
Yeah.
travel? And to clarify for people listening as well, like when I think of travel personally, it's changed so much since the pandemic. I always used to
Mhm,
think of travel as going elsewhere, but
mhm.
the pandemic and actually being friends with you, Lindsay, has taught me about how much travel can be like local and what's closer to home as well, whether home is like the province or the city that you're in. So, like, yeah, what was travel like growing up for you, and when did you get bit?
Yeah. The travel was always pretty, it was pretty calm, I would say, until I was about the big trips that we did as a family. I'm an only child, so that kind of plays a little bit into it. But when I was 4, 5, and 6, my parents took me to Disney in Florida. I don't remember anything about it really personally. I was still that little bit too young, but they remember. They still tell me stories of how like excited I was to meet Mickey and all this, and and I'm glad that they did it and they took me. But it really wasn't until I would say uh, high school. So I played ringette when I was younger, which for those that don't know, it's a kind of like a mix of hockey and basketball. Does that make sense? It's very quick and fast paced like basketball. There's a lot of passing. Um, but it's played on ice like hockey. There's just a couple of different rules and regulations. And so that took me on a trip with our team to Finland and Sweden.
What?
Um, yeah,
I'm
that was
learning so much about you right now. This is fantastic.
yeah. You get to you're probably hearing things and be like, oh, this all makes sense now. No. um, so
Just gone to Finland in December myself. This is, I don't know, another spot we can dig into a little. But anyhow, back to
yeah,
you.
for sure. So we did a trip to Finland and Sweden as a team, and it was it was interesting because at the time here we were considered an A team. We were borderline A team. We were not a very strong team, but there we just got walloped. Like, as expected, there's a reason why there are so many great hockey players from, Finland and Sweden, and why the KHL is so, so popular over there and whatnot. And even that, like, I don't remember a ton about that trip because again, it's different purpose, right? I remember more so the arenas and what we were playing and things like this, but it was the first time we really had gone outside of Canada, and it was just interesting. It was like, things like back then I think we arrived on a Sunday, and it was still, in some countries are still like this, but there it was very much the era of like everything's closed on Sunday. It's a family day, and so the only thing we could find for food was, I don't even remember what it was called. It was some fast food joint, and they fried everything in fish oil or something. It was like the strangest thing. Again, it's just one of those weird things that you're like, what? And then, we hopped on a bus and we didn't realize we had to pay. And like, it was just absolute chaos, especially with like, 12, 13, 14 girls all traveling together. Like, oh my gosh, it was ridiculous. Um, too funny. And then after that, I kind of took a step back from Ringette, and then I started getting involved with the first robotics program in high school. So I went
Right.
from more, the sports into nerddom. And
A
so for
different
those that
kind of
don't,
arena.
yes, a different kind of arena. It's still held in arenas, funny enough, but yes,
Yeah,
it's a very
yeah,
different
yeah.
kind of arena. So first is for inspiration and recognition of science and technology. That's what it stands for. And so every year, this organization comes out with a game that you then any high school team that is involved then designs a robot to complete this game. And often you're working with mentors from or organizations like car companies and engineering firms and things like this to help learn and utilize those skills in a functional manner, to hopefully get kids more involved in joining STEM. Um, so that was a little bit crazy too. It was pretty much like the Super Bowl of nerds. I think they called it the Super Bowl of
I love it.
smarts, is what they called it. So if your
Oh,
team made it to, the finals, during my era, it was in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was I'm pretty sure it was at the Georgia Dome. It was like this big arena. It was a huge, like 3 day affair. And so that's what I really remember. It's like I remember meeting up with friends down there, and we'd go to the Coca-Cola Museum and then go and like wander around downtown. Like I say downtown, but like near the hotel in Georgia, and go to, little restaurants and things like this. And that's when you start to get your little bit of freedom, because this was late high school for me. So this is grade 11, grade 12. So, you have a little bit more autonomy and whatnot. And then after that, it was university. Then getting my job at Triumph and moving, but literally on a whim. I applied for the position randomly. It was a last minute. Well, I'll apply for it. We'll see what happens. And then they picked me because of my graphic design diploma that I had. I beat out third and fourth years because I had those skills already. And so,
nice.
in 2 months, I was moving across the country for
Amazing.
originally 4 months, and then it turned into 8. So, I would say after that, it was kind of like, well, if I can do that, then I could probably figure out other places to go. And I'm probably not going to die. So here we go. Let's see what happens.
It's really cool to hear all the different influences and experiences in your life that have contributed to this love and part of your identity too, right? Like
Mhm.
this is so important to you and who you are and what you do.
Oh, for
Um,
sure. Yeah.
how do you choose now where you travel to? I know that you are really interested in Indigenous culture. You're really interested in sustainability, the outdoors. What are whether it's those things or other things, how do you choose your destinations?
Honestly, lately it's just been kind of what opportunities kind of present themselves, I just say it's one of those. I'm kind of in that, well, I'm just going to say yes era and see what happens. More recently, funny enough, I've been heading to more tropical destinations, which for anybody who knows me, I am absolute winter baby. So I've had many of friends laughing at me, being like, "What are you doing, trading snow for sunshine? Like, who are you?"
Right.
Saying the girl who went up to Yellowknife in April a couple of years back and was dealing with negative 40-degree weather to extend her winter. But I figured, especially with our weather this year, I was like, well, if you can't beat them, join them. Okay, Mama Nature. If you're going to give us warm weather, I'll just keep going the
Yeah.
other way. But no, funny enough, I've met some fast friends. And one of them, her name is Heather, and we are thick as thieves already. And I only met her in October. And her and her partner own a condo in Mexico. And so I hitched on to one of their adventures with some of their friends, and that was my first real taste of Mexico because I had been to Mexico before in 2019, but I was in Cozumel, so it's like not really real Mexico. And so
The
we
resort
flew into
piece.
Cancun. There, yes, it's very all resorts, cruise. It's a cruise port, it's a cruise town. It's a beautiful spot, definitely worth visiting for sure. But a very much different vibe from Puerto Morelos, which is where their condo is, and it's 20 minutes south of Cancun. So it was interesting just to, again, I didn't really know what to expect. I'd never traveled with these people before. It was very much, well, I have the opportunity. Why not? So I booked my flights while I was in Europe with visiting my friend Kasia in Italy. and, uh, and it was great. We had a blast. And so actually, funny enough, we leave this Saturday now, so in a couple of days to head back down there. But where was I going with this tangent? Oh my gosh, this happens to me all the time. Oh, how am I picking my this is why I have blonde hair. How
Oh
am I picking my
no,
trips?
be nice.
Uh, so yeah, it just so happened that that's why I picked Mexico. It just opportunity presented itself. So I was like, okay, like why not? And then even with Cuba a couple of weeks ago, my lovely friend Julia from who is Little Miss Ottawa, she posted a reel about finding cheap vacation deals, and I was like, interesting. Just how cheap? And I found it all inclusive in Cuba for 865 for the whole 8 days, 7 nights, flight, everything. I was like, well, I'm like never been to Cuba before.
Yeah.
Why not? So, and typically I do, because you mentioned sustainability and that, and I do typically prefer to stay, out of off of things like that. Um, and book with locals as much as I can, and do local experiences and whatnot. But there I you can't knock all inclusives because it does allow, especially for less experienced travelers, it gives them an easy way to get out, to access it and to get outside the
Mm-hmm.
country that
Mm-hmm.
they're from. And so, and there's a time and place, I would say, for it. And, you know me, I'm not one to sit still. So, I went off resort and multiple times and, and the area that I was in, Kygo it is very resort heavy. It's pretty much reserve, like an ecological reserve and then hotels and that's it really. But there's, the odd little restaurant here and there that's run by locals that you can, go to and enjoy dinner and whatnot. So we did that 3 times in our week. So,
Nice.
that's how I've been choosing lately. There's a couple bucket list trips that I'm working towards that I really want to do. One being, I think I mentioned to you, New Zealand next year. So
Yeah.
I'm talking with a friend of mine that I met through WITS, who lives down in Milwaukee, and she's a tour guide. And so we're trying to see how we can work together to, kind of run this, group trip and get down there. And she just came back a couple weeks ago from running her first group trip there, and she had an absolute
Oh,
blast. So
fantastic. North Island or South Island or both?
both.
Very
Yeah, it was
cool.
a 10. I think it was a 10 day. And then obviously, in this lovely gig economy that we have so chosen to be a part of, a lot of the travel too will then depend on partnerships and destinations like that. So as of right now, I'm hopefully going to be heading back to Virginia, just waiting on a contract in a couple of months to check out a different area of the state, which is always cool. It's always a great time. So, but again, is that somewhere that I would go on my own? Probably not. So
Yeah.
it's a neat experience to have these destinations say, hey, like we want to have you, and it's like, oh, I didn't know that you guys had XYZ, and that's kind of what happened when I first went to Virginia in 2019, and it was 8 day, 7 night road trip where I landed and started at the southern border of the state on the western side, right with Tennessee, and then I went all the way up the I-81 and stopped at little towns and that along the way, and it was awesome. I had such a great time. It's such a beautiful state. You know, you've got the depending on where you are, either the Appalachian or the Appalachian Mountains
Right,
pronunciation depends
right.
on where you are in the state, which I found very interesting. Um, and yeah, so lots of great hiking. Got Shenandoah National Park, you know, and so it was interesting to not only experience these popular destinations, but then also hit smaller towns such as Withville, which is there is only one Withville in the entire world. You will not find another town named it.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's a great little community with so much to do and a lot of really cool, attractions and hikes. And, it's a good mix of his history, food, outdoors, lots
All
of
the good
fun to be
things.
had. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Do you have any travel traditions? Like anything that you either do to prepare for your trips or while you're on your trips or even like post trip?
Yeah, usually to prepare, one thing I do that's part of why I will typically have colored hair before I go is because I will. That's why I force myself to sit for 45 minutes to an hour and just chill before I embrace the chaos and to give me a break from the chaos of getting ready. Is I will dye my hair and then I'll have a bath and then I sit and I just decompress and have some self care time for and then it and that just allows me to kind of a little bit more grounded and reset, and it forces me to take some time that I may not normally do otherwise. And that is pretty much my ritual before any big trip that I go
Yeah.
on. So
I
yeah.
love that. That's so cool. I haven't heard somebody talk about that centering before they leave on a trip before because as you mentioned, like it's often chaos before you go,
Yeah.
whether it's a family trip or a solo trip or a work trip. There's so many things you have to do before you leave. But that's actually really cool to take a breath and just
Yeah. And
yeah,
yeah, the little hamster that continuously spins up here sometimes needs a break. So I give her
definitely.
the break.
Definitely. And you kind of alluded to the next section a little bit without even realizing it. But
Okay.
for those who are just tuning in for the first time or don't know me outside of the podcast, prior to travel, language and words are my first love. And Lindsay, we've done French lessons
We
together.
have.
I'm I'm an Ontario certified French teacher, and in addition to blogging and travel coaching, I also teach privately English, French, and Spanish. And Lindsay and I worked on some French before you had a Quebecois
Yes, I think
work
that was before
trip.
I road trip the Côte Nord, starting in Tadoussac all the way to Kagashka.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
you spoke some French before that, right? Like I know growing up in Ontario, you obviously spoke French, but
Yeah.
yeah, can you talk
It
a
was
little bit about?
definitely, yeah, I am nowhere near conversational or anything like that by any means. For funny enough, French was actually my best subject up until high school, where unfortunately, it's the typical story of I had the French teacher and I didn't quite jive, and so that was the end of that, which is really unfortunate because I really did enjoy the classes and learning the language, but good old Duolingo came back into play, and especially with the knowing that trip was coming up, I was like, well, I'm heading, for those who aren't familiar, the route that I took was the Route des Baleines, which is the whale route. It's, fantastic for whale watching. It's a big draw into northern Quebec, and it follows the north shore of the St. Lawrence River. And so I took, it was almost 2 weeks. I think it was 10 days that I was out there, and just took my time and and traveled through. And for a part of it, I had a lovely gentleman by the name of Etienne who worked for the tourism board who stuck with me and helped me with communicating and things like this. But there were times when I was on my own and small fishing villages like Havre Saint Pierre, and I say small. Havre Saint Pierre is a little bit larger, but they're very more rural and not a lot of English spoken. And so I was I became pretty much prefaced every conversation with you know je parle pas français, mais n'est pas bon, so I'm not very good. And everybody was great. They're like, no problem. They spoke slowly, it helped me. If I couldn't figure out the words, there's a lot of sign language. Like it was great. And it's one of those things too, where if you go into it saying like, hey, like I'm not good, but I'm going to try, there's a lot of an appreciation for that. And I think that that's Quebec gets a bad reputation because a lot of people just go in there assuming that everybody's going to speak English. And it's like, well, no, that's not the culture. And to just go in and expect that, of course, you're going to be met with some friction and some confrontation because that's and I was just say it's rude. It's very rude. So
With you on that. If you're somewhere new, it's so important to make an effort and learn the language and use it and bumble your way through. Like that's part
yes,
of the fun of it, but it's also respect.
yeah,
It's a sign of respect. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that's why, I tapped her on the shoulder, was like, please help me with my words. Because for me, too, like I can reading, again, it's not like I could read, a novel by any means, but, basic things like a menu at a grocery store, functional French, like, I can read and I can listen, not bad if it's, a bit slower, if it's not too fast, but to be able to speak it, like, especially with conjugations and things like this, your brain just gets, overwhelmed, and vocabulary has never been my strong suit. It takes me 10 times to remember what the name of something is. Even if you said now, it's like, oh, what's that? I'd be like, I probably know this word, but I can't think of it. Like, I don't
It's
work with
hard when you're on the spot too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, I'm gonna put you on the spot right
oh
now.
no. Oh no. Oh no.
But more so in a fun way, in a fun way.
Okay.
I'm wondering if you have any like favorite words or phrases from French, or you also know some German, don't you?
I do. As soon as you said that,
Yeah.
I'm like, I already know what my favorite word ever is German.
Okay, okay. What is it?
And it is Schadenfreude, which
Oh,
is
classic.
yeah,
Classic.
yeah, pretty much having the amusement out of somebody's mishap.
Someone else's pain
Yeah,
is
pretty much.
entertaining.
Yeah, and I feel like that is sums up a good chunk of my personality. But moving on.
Okay, all right. We'll hop into the next questions then.
Uh,
Amazing. I was gonna say on peut parler en français maintenant si tu veux,
oh
mais no,
no.
I won't put you in there. Yeah.
But one of these days when I can actually be conversational, then 100%, then I will be
You
fair.
would do
It'll be fair game.
amazing. Awesome. We've touched a little bit about this, touched on a little bit about this because you have worked in the industry, but travel and tech is something I'm always curious to chat to people about because you and I grew up in the era where like we didn't have cell phones as a kid, we didn't have iPads,
Mhm.
we went out and we fell from trees and we played road hockey and
Yeah.
we were like out in the world. We wanted to see a friend, we ran over to their house or we called their home
Mhm.
phone. Um, and so we also traveled that way before we do now,
Yeah.
with Instagram and blogs and all the things that we do professionally, but also that we use in our personal travel. So I'm curious to know how has technology changed the way that you travel?
Um, I'm definitely don't get nearly as lost as I used to. That's definitely a plus because I am directionally challenged at the best of times. But I remember the days of when I played ringette, it was a lot of, there weren't a lot of teams. So it was pretty much given that you were a travel team. And so, that would take us to, sometimes it was just to, Burlington or the Falls or whatnot, but sometimes it would take us up into Barrie or, Laura Fergus, Hagersville. And we'd I remember printing out the MapQuest directions to get us from A to B. And then if, and heaven forbid, if there was a road closed, then it was like, oh no, like, oh, where do we go? What do we do? How do we get there? So it definitely I would say allowed me to be a little bit more of I don't know if I would say tolerant, but, when things went wrong, when things go kind of like haywire, and I can be a little bit more chill than I think I would be if I didn't have that kind of background. But I have to say, it is really nice now to be able to, if you're lost or something, the offline maps function is just brilliant. It is save you so many hours of countless aimless wandering trying to figure out where I am or things like this. But sometimes it's fun to just be able to you know just turn it off. I think it's nice that we're in that era of it's it's a choice as opposed to a necessity. And I think that allows us to have a lot more freedom in that, we can, plan out our days as many of us do, especially if we're researching for a blog post or things like this. But then, we can kind of just say, well, you know what, I kind of know where I am. I'm just going to turn it off for a while and just wander. But then it's having that security blanket of if you get into a spot where you're kind of like, oh, okay, where am I? I don't feel so comfortable anymore. You can, with the flick of the switch, turn on your maps or contact somebody or be back in a safe position as opposed to, kind of being stuck high and dry. Which I think is very important, especially as female travelers that often are solo. This is something that we do have to think about and do have to, kind of have on the back of our mind. So I think in a way, technology has really allowed us to do so in a more safe manner because we can contact people if things go haywire much more quickly than if we didn't have that, you know, we, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So
Yeah. It's interesting too, because it's almost a bit of a double-edged sword when you talk about technology for like safety for females, because I know a lot of us in the blogging world also um, might use technology, specifically Instagram, let's say, differently than our like layperson friends who don't blog, because we'll post a day later or hours after we've left a place specifically for safety reasons as well. So as much as it can help us in situations, it can also, if we're not conscious about how we use it, it can be a little dicey at times too.
100%.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. I've unfortunately never had that happen, but I've definitely had friends who have had stories of people, trying to message them, trying to figure out where they are. And I say now, even working with tourism boards, especially because I do often travel alone, I'll tell them right up front, I'm like, if I'm posting about the hotel, it's like, I will post about the hotel upon checking out.
Yep.
So if they, and it's a little bit different too when if I'm traveling with somebody,
Hmm.
or whether it's a friend or family or on a group or whatnot, then hey, by all means, then I'll post more so in real time. But yeah, no, when I'm alone, it's like nope, it's gonna go up later. It's gonna go up when I check out, and then I'll talk about how awesome the hotel was
Right.
after I am off the premises.
Yeah, yeah. And as a travel blogger, how do you plan and prepare for travel? Like, are there blogs that are go-tos for you, or podcasts, or YouTube channels, or do you prefer like guidebooks and family and friend recommendations? What's your prep process like?
It's a menagerie of things. If you look at my phone is out of reach right now. But if you look at my Google Maps, it is just a barrage of stars and flags and things. So I'm very much wonder if I'm on like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, and I see a cool spot, I'll flag it. And then if I'm going to a destination that I know, say you've been to, for example, then it's like, hey, like what are some, when I was in Dublin, I was like, hey, what are some good restaurants to go to, and some good recommendations and whatnot, just to kind of get a feel and get an idea of what I want to do. And honestly, a lot of the time, I literally just look at Google Maps. I'll
Yeah.
just go into Google Maps and look and be like, restaurants, okay, and it's like, I don't know, da, 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 da. And you just kind of go around and see, what's, got some good ratings and what looks cute and whatnot, and then blogs and that as well too. I typically go for I opt to tap on the shoulders of the bloggers that I know or I have followed
Yeah.
for a long time. It's always curious. Like I always search just like things to do in Toronto on Google just to see. I'm like, what is coming up, and that's also just my SEO brain going like, Google, what are you showing me?
And it's interesting you bring up Toronto as well, because I know you saw that, like speaking of doing research and things, this week I had a large publication steal a photo of
Mm-hmm.
mine for their website. And this is a website that a lot of people do use for their, I'm just going to come out and say it, blog TL. Like
Yeah,
everybody knows that
so
they're
they did
really,
it. Like, so if they
yeah.
didn't like it, they shouldn't have done it. So we go and talk about it.
Right, exactly. So, and people need to be, large corporations need to be called out on stuff like that as well, I think. But um, I was curious about when it comes to your preparation period, because you know all the work that goes into blogs beforehand, but I also know that you love talking to people and gathering your information that way. And so I was curious to see, yeah, like where you get your travel inspiration from. So that's neat.
Yeah, it's
Um,
again, and especially too once you get into the nitty gritty of a place, then and I think a lot of time it depends too on how long I'm in a destination. Like, for
Mm,
example, for Dublin, since I only had the 2 days, I pretty much kind of had my days planned out ahead of time, and it still allowed me a bit of just meandering, be moving around and whatnot. But if I'm somewhere for say like a week, like even in Cuba, it was like we were asking a lot of the folks, our lovely folks that like that worked there, and that being like, hey,
right.
like, what do you recommend? They told us about taking the bus over down to Playa Pilar, which was it's one of the best beaches in Cuba, and it's just a short 45-minute drive on a open double decker open top sightseeing bus, and it was some amazing snorkeling, like probably some of the best snorkeling I've had the pleasure of experiencing so far, and whatnot. And yeah, and if we didn't, ask around or talk to people, we might not have known about it. So
Definitely. Yeah. Ask the locals for sure. All
yeah,
of your prep doesn't have to be done before you leave. Yeah.
exactly.
Do you document like for yourself personally your journeys at all? I mean, it's part of the work that you do, but do you journal or do you scrapbook or do you like voice note? Do you do anything like that?
I used to journal like when I did my big Euro trip in that was 2012. I want to say
Dude, we
I
were in
was.
Europe at the same time.
Were you really?
That's when I lived in Ireland, was 2012,
Oh,
2013.
stop!
We were
That's
on
so
campus
funny.
at the same time at Waterloo. We were in Europe at the same time.
Wild,
We
absolutely
were
wild.
meant to meet and become friends.
Exactly. Just it just took us a little longer, just the universe was like, okay, maybe no. Okay, maybe no. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
now it's going to happen. Um, yeah, I used to journal, honestly, and for me, it was I just couldn't keep up with it. And then it just became that like thing in the back of my head where I'm like, oh, I really wanted to do this, but I'll often still save little, I don't save my flight um passes or like tickets as much just because a lot of the time they all look the same, especially if they're printed out of Pearson. It's always such thin, flimsy, whatever. But little things like when I was in Italy, we got like a little like pass for the museums, and so like I kept the ticket that they printed out, or I have like the odd wristband from exit or entry into like a cenote in Mexico. Like I'll have that, and just like little trinkets like this that eventually I would like to put up on like a cork board or something as a little
Yeah.
collection of things. But right now they are the things that I do keep, and they're few and far between too, just because it's also a matter of I don't want to be carrying around a bunch of stuff. Back in the day, originally I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll get like shot glasses. No, that stopped. I think after about five. I'm like, this is stupid. I don't need this many shot glasses. I don't even drink that much. Um, and then in Europe, then it was patches, but then it became hard. It was just hard to find them. And I was like,
Yeah.
especially in the little more obscure areas. Like I did a trip. Part of that trip, I was in Bosnia. So trying to find a Bosnian patches near impossible. Funny enough, I think I found it in like Italy or something. There's
Oh,
somebody selling
jeez.
one. I'm like, you know what, good enough. Like close enough. I was there, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, pictures are always the best way to do it. And even if they aren't being used all the time, it's still nice to be able to go back and I do appreciate when Google does that. Like, hey, remember this from last year? The odd time it's kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't want to remember that part. But for there are that's becoming few and far between for the most part. It's like, oh yeah, I was here. Like, oh, or especially the ones where it's like 5 or 6 years ago and it pops up. You're like, oh my gosh, that feels
Yeah.
like another lifetime ago.
Yeah. Yeah. When we talk about travel, we often talk about like the impact or the benefits that we receive from travel. And there's only kind of one question I want to touch on with that because I have some other questions that I think we could dig into a bit deeper. But are there any new skills, or yeah, are there any new skills that you've developed or previous skills that you've honed from your travels?
That's a good question. I'm sure there are, but to think if I pull them out of the top of my head, I would say I'm definitely a lot more. I've become a lot more aware, like personally, of my own like energy levels because like very much I can be a very do all the things kind of person where it's like, I've got this big list. It's like, okay, I want to do everything. And then you just get to the point of exhaustion where you're just so tired that all you can do is cry. And it's like, well, that's not good. Like, that's not a good way to operate as a human. And so I would say I've become more organized in that regard and be more like aware of like I only have so much capacity. Like I'm not going to
Mm.
see everything unless I am, if I am somewhere for a week, then yeah, you know what, maybe I'm going to be able to see everything that I want to see. However, it's kind of defeating that FOMO of like, you know what, it's okay if you don't see everything. If you really want to come back, you'll make time and you'll come back. And so being able to, decipher what's the must do's and then the, hey, this would be nice. And then the, well, if I have free time. And that's kind of how I organize, how the attractions and experiences that I want to have when I go somewhere. We as content creators, I think we don't travel often like normal people. We are very much like we want to see as much as we can. We want to do as much as we can do. And so there's always this underlying like, oh, like I gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta do this. And so being able to be like, actually, like, why don't we just take a minute? Why don't we plan this out a little better? And definitely research wise, like I definitely plan my trips a lot better than I used to be able to. Like I could definitely fit in more because I have to be able to hone those skills of I know what to look for. I know the kind of things, the kind of attractions I want to see and the experiences I want to have, which then will craft my trip to be something very different versus just the somebody who's kind of plops themselves and is like, hey, where am I going to go today? And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that by any means. I'm just too type A for that.
I love it. What's been a place that's really surprised you? You either had a preconceived notion of it or you had no idea about it and it just kind of blew you out of the water.
Honestly, for me, a big one was probably Yellowknife. Because when I booked it, I didn't even really have like I have a goal of being able of visiting every province and territory in Canada. And so I have now crossed as of last year. I crossed off Saskatchewan, and so I have all the provinces done. All I have left now is Nunavut and Yukon. But when I was crossing off the Northwest Territories, this was back in 2018, I think it was. I just found cheap flights. I found a $600 return flight from Kitchener. So I was
I
like,
remember you getting that. I think we had known each. Yeah, yeah.
and I was
You were
sitting
so
there, and I
pumped.
remember, yeah, I was sitting, and I sat on it for breaks. I was like, well, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? And the deal was still there, like a week later, and I was like, okay, book it. Here we go. Um, but I booked it for April, and I was like, oh, okay, April, spring, yeah. Not on the 49th parallel. It ain't. It's still winter. And so leading up to it, it was like kind of that shock of, I'm looking at the weather. It's like negative 30, negative 35. I'm like, what? Like, oh, duh, you're going how far north? Like, it was just this funny concept of, oops, like, didn't realize that. But it was really, really neat. Yellowknife is the capital, but it has that small town feel. It's only 35,000 people. And so it's a fairly tight knit community. And so when I landed, I'd reached out to some people ahead of time and he had arranged some tours and whatnot, but it quickly became, oh, well, so and so knows this, who knows, right? Like 2 degrees of separation pretty much in Yellowknife. Um, so that was really, really interesting to see, and just the variety of not just experiences, but also like food and that's in Yellowknife, which wouldn't really expect to have an Ethiopian restaurant in Yellowknife. You wouldn't expect,
Nice.
yeah, like it was really, really cool. And everybody there is just, again, it has that small town feel like we have in rural Ontario, where it's that, if you see somebody at the side of the road, people stop, or it's like, hey, are you okay? Like, is everything all good? And you're like, yeah, yeah, no, I'm okay. People actually check in, as opposed to
Mm.
the blinders of the kind of bigger cities. It's one of the places where I almost didn't take my flight home. Like, I almost,
No way.
yeah, I was pretty close to just being like, nah, you know what? I think I'll stay here. It was really, really great. And that was again in April, and it's still in the dead of winter. So,
You pack your Michelin Man outfit for that
yeah,
trip. Yeah.
exactly. Oh, exactly.
You're also a traveler who I think of as somebody who's like pretty conscientious. Like when it comes to the place that you're visiting, I know that it's important to you to be respectful and to do research, as you've talked about, and to think about your impact being there, not just what you're getting out of it, but how you are contributing to the place or the people and what you're leaving behind. Like, where did that come from for you? And do you have any tips for people who may be new to traveling on how they can respect local cultures when they're the odd person out?
Yeah. Where that came from, that's honestly a great question. I think it's probably just a matter of, my family and I, we've always kind of, for as long as I can remember, given back. Like every year, my mom and I put together kits for the YWCA here in Niagara. And more recently, my mom is a big knitter. She knits like crazy, and so she started knitting blankets for the Niagara Native Center for some of the ladies there at Christmas time and stuff like this. And so I think that's just always been kind of ingrained in the everyday for me. I think it just comes as well with as you travel. As you travel and you realize people that you connect with, it opens a lot of doors to be more respectful and understanding and showing interest. Just a matter of if you see somebody walking down the street, it can be something as simple as like, hey, I love your dress. Like, where did you get that? It's like, well, actually, I got it from XYZ and blah blah blah, and it just starts a whole nother conversation, and who knows where it'll take you. A big thing too is the big brands, and COVID really showed this, where the big brands are the powerhouses, and so I think it became more and more important to support small businesses and local mom and pop shops, and I think it became more prevalent to do that at home. But then, and don't get me wrong, Starbucks and McDonald's, that they have their time and place. Like, you just want like a taste of something familiar. Like, it's like, like, I'm not gonna, rag on anybody if you've been traveling for, 3 months and all you want is a freaking Timmy's double double. Like,
For
I'm the
sure.
first that comes off that plane. I'm like, I want my everything bagel with herb garlic cream cheese, and I am a happy camper. Um, it's but again, it's that knowing where you are and how you can contribute to the local economy, because a lot of, and Cuba, for example, like a lot of the countries, they rely on tourism. They really do. And unfortunately, the way that tourism is often set up is that it's putting some money maybe into that local community, but it's not putting as much as it could. And so being cognizant of that and figuring out ways in order to help contribute, so that you can make an impact and can be supporting the local economy and not just these big names that you can't really get away from.
Yep. Yep. Is there a type of travel that you haven't tried yet that you want to try?
Type of travel I haven't done. I've never been on a cruise.
I knew you were going to say that one.
I still don't know if I want to. Honestly, I'm still kind of like, it sounds like a giant petri dish of germs, so I'm not really sure yet. I feel like if I find the right one, I think I'll be like, okay. Say like an Alaskan cruise or something like this, like that would be a little bit more like, okay, uh, to do. One thing I would love to do, like a multi-day like backcountry. Like, I've never done
Cool.
anything like that. So and I have a multitude of friends that have. I'm very much I'm more of a glamper than huff it through the bush with a big bag on fighting off mosquitoes. That's mosquitoes are kind of really usually what get me. But to do that, or even like a multi-day canoe trip or a kayaking trip or something like that is definitely on my list of something I would like to experience. And
What's something that you do when you're traveling that you don't do when you're at home or when you've lived in a new place? Because you also lived in Florida as well as Vancouver, right?
I did. I lived for 4 months on Miami Beach.
Yeah, and you lived in a few cities within Ontario too. So, yeah, whether it's living in a place other than where you grew up or whether it's while you're traveling, what's something different that you do?
That's a good question. I would say when I move somewhere new, I'm definitely more uh, prone to like getting out and exploring and trying new things. I find when I'm at home, I'm a little bit more of a creature of habit. It's like I'll go to the same coffee shop or I'll go to the same restaurants or and whereas if I go somewhere new, it's like, okay, I've got my list. It's like I've got
Yeah.
these 30 restaurants that I want to try and I'm here for 20 days. How do I do it? Kind of deal. Um, One thing that I always do no matter where I am is I just walk. Like,
You
just
are great
walking.
with that.
Yeah, like especially like during COVID and that when we were in the lockdowns and we were, really only allowed to get out for, our, for physical activity and whatnot. Like, I remember, especially in like that kind of May, June, the first lockdown there, like I would just wake up, and as soon as I wake up, I'd make myself a coffee and just go for a walk. And it was really nice because it was honestly, it was so quiet because, people weren't driving anywhere. Like, it was that eerie quiet. It's like
Oh, yeah. I
the
remember those
picture.
days.
Yeah, it's almost like the picturesque weird juxtaposition of where you see in like The Walking Dead or things like this, where it's like it's the calm after a storm kind of thing, where it's like, it's like, oh, this is actually like really pretty, but it's like quiet for a really bad reason.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's like
yeah.
that kind of thing. but I like being able to try to find those moments wherever you go. So I am definitely more prone to wake up for a sunrise away than I am at home. Just be able to have that like moment of peace before the world wakes up, or even seeing what it's like in somewhere that maybe is a little bit busier than what I'm used to, watching that it come to life and whatnot. I think those moments are really fun. It's like you really get to know a place because of them. So.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Kind of like the untouched experience before everything comes to life for the day. Yeah. What's the weirdest place that you've ever slept?
Weirdest place I've ever slept. That's a great question.
I love this question.
Weirdest place. The weirdest place I ever slept was this. It was a. I wouldn't even call it a boutique hotel. It was an art hotel in Berlin, and it was an artist who designed all of these different rooms, and they were all unique and all wacky. The room that I had was suspended off of four beams, these big four wooden beams. I have to try to picture.
Yeah, you
What was
gotta
it
find the name
called?
of this place.
It was like an artist studio, and every couple of years he'd take out one of the rooms and redo it. And so as we were checking out, we were able to see a bunch of the rooms that were open. It's like one
Oh,
was almost like a surgical setup, where it's like they had these like mirrors and things, and then
what?
the bed was like the operating kind of table,
No,
and
no, no, no,
oh yeah,
no.
and then
No, thank you.
one was all mirrors. It was entirely mirrored, and then you just like there was like one handle for the door, and that
Oh
was
my
it.
God.
So like I can only imagine what happened in that room. Um,
It sounds like the love hotels in Korea. I don't
and then
know.
another was it was like coffins, so you'd actually sleep inside of a coffin.
Nope.
Yeah.
Hard
Oh yeah.
pass.
Oh yeah. It was a really cool. Oh, what was it called? Oh, it's gonna drive me nuts.
I'll put a little ad
I
in.
think I
Yeah.
think I have to go tumbling down the rabbit hole because it is. I don't think it's open anymore. I think above it or beside it or something was his studio, so it was like connected to like his workspace. I know I did a blog post on it before. I just don't know if it's still living or not. But if not, maybe I'll have to go and revive it. I think there was 20 different rooms. I think I got to see about 10 of them.
Cool.
It was super neat. That was
Oh,
definitely
I
the
hope it's
weirdest.
still around.
Yeah, that was definitely the
Nice.
weirdest place. And it was just like it just felt eerie. It wasn't in one of the popular neighborhoods of Berlin. It was a little bit more further out.
And Berlin's got some of that edge to it too. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
remember the first time I went to Berlin, I absolutely loved it. I was like, "Oh, I can't wait. Like I want to live here." Like I went back in 2019, and I was like there was an eeriness, there was just like this undertone that I didn't really remember from before, and I don't know if it's just because I'm a bit older or if I'm like I don't know more in tune with energies and
Yeah.
juju, or I don't know, but I'm like this is like something ain't right. Something ain't right here. Like something's weird here. um but Berlin is such a cool destination. I feel like Berlin's one of those places that everybody should go to just because of that history between East and West, and
Yeah.
that man who will not be named.
Yeah. Did I tell you my mom was there when the wall came down?
No.
Just by chance, she was there when the wall came down.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and a former partner of mine like lived in Germany, not in Berlin, but lived in Germany during that time period as well. And yeah, like all of that's present history
Yeah.
still. The people who can speak to that experience.
Yeah. I feel like media does a really good job of making things seem a lot like they happened a lot further ago than they actually did.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's something that travel teaches us too, is that whatever we learned about in the textbooks or saw on the video in class is it's actually pretty still like right in front of us in a lot of
Hmm.
ways, whether it's through our
Yeah.
grandparents, our parents, or our own lived
Yeah.
experiences. Yeah. Oh man, so much to dive into, but
I know, right?
yeah. Um, I'm curious to know because you and I have started talking about this a little bit lately. Um, I work with points and miles and I teach people how to use points and miles. And you've started to dive into this a little bit. I can see you
I
starting to laugh over there.
Yeah, because I'm just like I have the dumb when it comes to points, 100%. Especially when you posted a reel of like of how you save one of your clients from spending so much money in business class or using so many
Yeah,
points,
like
and I'm thinking
950
about it, and
bucks.
I'm like, I bet you that was me because I just have no idea about, and I just honestly I
Yeah.
just don't have the capacity to sit there and go and learn about it. I'm just like, nope, my
Which is
So yeah,
understandable because the rabbit holes for them, like the past 12 years, I've been down a good chunk of those rabbit holes. There's still
yeah.
some I haven't dove into, but yeah, no, I can't wait for you to start traveling more on points and miles. And for anybody else listening or watching who's curious about this, I do have an online course. I'll put it in the show notes, and I do one-on-one coaching and workshops and stuff like that. But Lindsay, I feel like you were gonna take off
Oh, I hope so. That's the
once you
plan.
do
I
more of
mean,
this.
I'm kind of kicking myself in that I should have because I know the last I had because I had a pretty good chunk of Aeroplan is the one that I used to save a lot with air miles, but obviously over the past couple of years that I feel like air miles has really become a lot weaker as a points program.
Yep.
And so and really here in Canada it's kind of like, well, you know, if you're going to pick an airline, it's either Air Canada or WestJet. And I used to be a really big fan of WestJet until this past January when they grounded all their flights during that deep freeze in
Mm.
Calgary. And, you know, if Lynx Air, who just went bankrupt, 3 weeks ago, could fly and WestJet couldn't, and their hub is Calgary, I was like that to me just says they're not overly reliable. So I'm like, well, there's only other one big one. So we're going Air Canada, baby. Airplane, here I come.
Yeah, definitely. Very cool.
Yeah.
What's one or two items that you travel with that are like necessities for you? And maybe it's something that's helpful to other people, or maybe it's something that you just swear by.
Yeah. We're gonna go heavily functional because Ray travels with the phone. A lot of the time, I actually don't travel with my DSLR a ton anymore. It really depends on the trip. Um, but that's another rabbit hole to go down. But we're gonna go super functionality. Two things I never travel without: earplugs and wet wipes. Earplugs started when I would hostel it up in Europe. Now I sleep so much better with it. It's not even a matter of keeping the noise out. Like it's just a matter of helping me stay asleep because I am like a fairly light sleeper. And so if I hear a strange noise or, and if I'm going to be somewhere for multiple days the first night, I typically don't sleep very well. And so earplugs help me just stay asleep because it's just a difference in
Environment.
scenery, different noises and things you're just not used to. And I don't want to. And so earplugs help me stay asleep so that I'm not a cranky lady the next day without my beauty sleep. And then wet wipes are just, especially anywhere tropical. It's like I just need to. Sometimes you just need a little freshening up. That's all I
Personal
gotta say.
hygiene on the
Well,
go.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And especially too, like there's been so many times, like a more recent time. So when I came back from Europe, I don't know where I caught it or what happened, but I pretty much came back and I had ringworm. Um, yeah, and so now I'm like hyper aware of that stuff. And don't get me wrong, especially in Mexico and places like this, I'm like, I want to pet all the cats, but I don't want to go through that ordeal again. And so I have literally a Ziploc bag of wet wipes that I keep in like every bag that I own, whether it's a camera bag, backpack, day bag, purse. And then you know what? Then yeah, I can pet the cat, and then I use the wet wipes. Or if you go into a restaurant, something like tacos are messy. It's like
Right.
I don't like. Then I could just there you go. You know what I mean? It's just like it's just having that ease of I feel sticky, I feel gross, or I'm sweating my face off here. I need just freshen up a little. I will not trade that for the world. So yeah, wet wipes are come with me everywhere.
Those are both great tips. And speaking of tips, as a female who often but not always travels solo, do you have one safety tip, either for women or just for anybody in general who's traveling?
Sure.
What's something that you do?
If you're especially in evenings, not if you're traveling alone, share your location. I would say, even if it's I mean, Snapchat is an easy one. I don't use it very often, but to just be able to just flick it on and say, hey, and then anybody you've selected that you're friends with can, see where you are. And it doesn't drain your battery a lot.
Oh, nice.
Whereas like say if you do it in WhatsApp where you can share the location for a set period of time, but it's pinging your location live. And so it can really, kill your battery. But just letting people know where you are, is the
Do you ever
biggest
do
thing.
the Sorry to interrupt you. Do you
Yeah.
ever do the Google Map share your location one? And if so, do you know how that affects battery? Because I know people in the van life and RV community who do that, but have you ever tried it?
I've never tried the Google one. It might be a little bit better on battery, especially I do have a Pixel phone, so I feel like that would probably jive a little bit more. technology wise, but definitely something to look into. But even if you don't want to share your location or you are getting low on battery, just messaging somebody and saying, hey, if you don't hear from me in 3 hours, call. Just like allowing somebody else to know where you are, especially when you're halfway across the world, because it can be a matter of life and death, depending on the situation. So it
Yeah.
never hurts to tell somebody, hey, I'm here.
I started doing that when I moved to Dublin because it was my first time away from like not living at home. I lived through home at home through university. And
You
so
lived
with
through
the
home. I think that's an
yeah, I
accurate
lived through
descriptor.
home. Yeah.
Sorry, Taurus parents.
No, my parents are the best.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I dubbed them safety texts because I would make all my friends text me when they got home after
Yep.
the pub, and I would text my friends, and it was just like that little check-in where we know that yeah, you're
Yeah.
someone knows that you're somewhere safe. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a very that's a girl thing too. It's like that mama bear instinct comes out where it's like, hey, where are you? You good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, yeah. And I do that with my dude friends too. Or I'm like,
I
text
love
me when
it.
you're home. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's definite mama vibes, mama bear
Yeah. I
vibes.
do with my partner. Like especially if say if we've
Yeah.
been out and it's a long night and then we're heading home or whatever. I'm like, let me know you're home. I'm like,
What's something that you do to deal with post-trip blues?
I said plan another one.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew it.
um honestly a lot of the time it's funny because I was just thinking about this. It's one of those things I think that as you travel more, the effects become lower. It's kind of mitigated because it's like, okay, this is the your usual, it's not going to be your last trip, it's gonna there's there's gonna be something coming kind of thing. But I think part of it too is also like just doing something with the memories, like how we are crafting content and that from it. It's like we get to still talk about it, we get to still share about it. It's almost like we're reliving it, and either the hopes of people just being curious and interested and yay, or hopefully maybe planning their own trip. And so it's almost that like I love getting those messages where I've given somebody a recommendation and then they message me back going like, hey, I went here because of you,
Yeah.
like it's awesome. Like
Yeah.
I
Oh,
love
I'm
like
with
that
you on
stuff.
that.
Oh
It's the best part of blogging.
yeah,
100%.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so neat.
Very cool. As a bonus for the podcast listeners, I'm putting together, with the help of my guests, a travel playlist. And so I'm wondering if you either
Oh,
have one song that sums up your travel style or that reminds you of one of your trips. Because I feel like a lot of trips have anthems to them. You know what
oh,
I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Oh, can I think of one off the top of my head though? That's a good question. I mean, I absolutely love um Kygo. Kygo is always he's one I seem to circle back to. Um there there is a really good song that kind of talks about it, like alludes to like travel. I think it's called Raging, funny enough. The title doesn't really quite match the lyrics, but it kind of talks about that feeling of a trip kind of coming to an end, or like having to leave somebody and then be able to try and like reconnect later kind of thing. But if it's I hope that's the correct one that I'm thinking of. My brain is not a jumble of songs. My friends love playing this game with me where it's like, what's that song? And I'm like, I know all the lyrics, but could I remember the title or who sings it? Absolutely not. Um,
I couldn't answer this question myself because I never know the names of songs or lyrics
yeah,
unless they're Keith Urban songs. That's
there you
it.
go. Love it, love it. And
Yeah.
like I'm very much the EDM upbeat poppy, it's like the Kygo, Lady Gaga, Cruella. Like those are my like a big top three for Tiesto.
Love
Yeah,
that.
that's me. That's me.
That's
That's
awesome.
100% me, and that's definitely me while traveling. It's just like, oh, okay, we're gonna go. It's that golden retriever energy. It's like, oh, where? Go here. Go here. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, enthusiastic
Yeah,
about everything. Awesome.
yeah,
Well, once you find out the exact song name, if you're sure if it's that, we'll plop it into the playlist.
perfect. Sounds good.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to end with a speed round.
Oh
So, in
no.
one word, yeah, I know,
Oh
one
no.
word or one sentence. That's what we're going for. Okay.
Okay.
You can do it. I have faith in
Oh, thank you. I'm glad one of us does.
you. Where's your next trip?
Mexico.
What's your favorite mode of transportation?
Car.
Planned trips or spontaneous trips?
Both.
I knew you were going to say that because lately you've been doing so many, like your last, what, two or three trips, and this one, they're all spontaneous, no?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This coming trip is a little bit more planned because we booked our flights in January. But again, like we have nothing planned for it.
Yeah.
Like we were like, oh, we want to, we have an idea of things, but it's very shoot from the hip of like, what do we feel like doing today? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Love it. Underpacker or overpacker?
overpacker.
Most overrated destination.
I said London.
London, England, I'm guessing,
London,
not
England.
Ontario.
Yeah, yeah. Funny enough, I've never really been to London, Ontario.
What?
I know, I know. I lived in
Okay.
Kitchener for what on and off for 10 years, and I never went to London.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, most underrated destination.
Northwest Territories.
What home comfort do you miss the most when you're away?
My cat.
Oh, yeah, so true.
Yeah, my baby, my fur baby. I miss her. If I could take her everywhere, I would.
What's the best piece of travel advice you've received?
You're never stuck.
Ooh, that's a great one. Who gave
Yeah.
you that piece of advice?
My mama bear.
Oh, mamas are so smart.
Yeah, yeah. She always said to
Okay.
me, she's like, "You're never stuck." She's like, if you plans fall through or whatever. She's like, "You have a credit card for a reason. You can figure that out later. It's safety first. Make sure you're somewhere safe. Make sure you're okay."
Yeah.
You know. Mhm.
Mama bear for the win.
Yeah.
Window seat or aisle seat?
Window always.
Describe yourself as a traveler in 3 words.
I mean, I already said it with two: organized chaos. bubbly,
Yeah.
bubbly, organized chaos. We'll go with that.
Yeah, okay. And what are 3 characteristics that make a good travel partner, whether that partner is a friend, a partner, or a family member?
Understanding, communicative, respectful.
Cool. Best gift for a traveler. And it can be tangible or intangible. I've had some
Mhm.
interesting answers with this.
I would say for a traveler, I'm just gonna speak for myself. Planning, like plan something. Like so instead of tangible things, plan an experience.
Cool. Awesome. Last but not least, best travel app that you cannot live without.
I'm gonna go basic Google Maps, baby. I'd be so lost. I never get home.
Keep it simple, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Lindsay. I know we've been
yeah.
talking about this
Welcome.
for a bit. It was so good to have you here to chat and to
Oh,
learn more about you.
yeah. Oh my gosh, it was a
Yeah.
hoot. I'm glad that I could make a surprise. I can still surprise you after how many years of friendship. This is fun.
Yeah, yeah. And where can people find you online? And is there anything else that you want to add?
See, so my website is ivenbit.ca, go Canada. And then Facebook and Pinterest, my username is ivenbit on Instagram and Threads and Twitter, X, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's IBB Travel. I'm also IBB Travel on TikTok. Other than that, yeah, shoot me a message, say hello. If you go somewhere that because you've seen one of our things or whatever, tag us in it. We love that stuff. It makes our
Yeah,
days.
yeah,
So especially when
yeah.
we're not traveling and we're at home in front of our computer typing about the adventures that we just did, we want to live vicariously through you. If you're going
Yeah.
somewhere, like we want to hear about it. We want to see where you are. We love following along. So
Yeah, and I really
tell
feel
us
like
more.
online spaces are spaces for dialogue, not just for us
Yeah,
to blab about where we've been. We
exactly.
want to hear what's up with everybody else as well. I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, my friend. We'll chat soon.
Yes, we will. Say it let's cheers with our little mugs here.
Oh, yes. Cheers. See you later.
Bye.